We do have another Tier 2 contest to look ahead to. A Sunday game as Romania host Uruguay.
Yeah.
Although they don't. They host them in Italy.
They do, yes. It was rescheduled. It was initially going to be in the Arco de Triomphe in Bucharest, but I think it was rescheduled. It was meant to be a Saturday game as well, but it was rescheduled and pushed back a day. So it will be in, was it the Il Paganini Centre in Verona in Italy, kicking off at 2 p.m. local. That's 1 p.m. our time.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a hungry enough game. Angus Gardner taking it, interestingly. The Aussie ref. Good to see him back in the whistle.
Good to see him back. Yeah, he was going to be on the Lions tour and then he wasn't, and he couldn't. Yeah, no, it was a weird one.
Yeah,
so it's
great communicator, Angus. Colours the game nicely. Likes to let it flow. Big fan of him. And it's definitely, this is one of those fun Tier 2 games that I'm a big fan of because it's real proper. Like obviously
stylistic matchups. You could slap a Springbok and an All Black jersey on either one of them and have your stylistic matchup, but it is a lower level.
Yeah, this is defence and forward oriented European Tier 2 rugby versus what Uruguay have been bringing, which is this flair and this verve and this tempo and this South American samba rugby.
Swagger through it,
and which obviously Uruguay are at the very top. They are the best Tier 2 team in the Americas. They're at the, in the World Cup,
at the minute,
whereas Romania are struggling to qualify for the World Cup. So it's not quite Uruguay, Georgia, the best versus the best. But we will get an illustration as to the kind of the level that each side has been playing at. Traditionally, the European Tier 2 sides stronger than
physically stronger for sure,
and generally,
others,
but the Polynesians usually. But Uruguay have been on the march in recent times, and it'll be interesting to see how well they'll stack up against this Romanian side. Has the game moved on? Is the rugby that's being played in South America truly improving, perhaps beyond what's going on in Europe? That's exciting.
Because the record is in Romania's favour, but Uruguay recorded their first ever win in 2018 over Romania in Romania, and it was a 27-20 win with a last second intercept. But that was obviously part of their progression from 2015 to 2019, where they ended up in that World Cup and turning heads with that great victory over Fiji as well. So previous to that, I think their best result was a 2010 draw in Montevideo, which was a Rugby World Cup qualifier as well, but Romania ended up doing for them in the follow-up leg in Bucharest and qualifying in 20th spot for that particular World Cup. But this one doesn't have any of that kind of stake to it, but it is just interesting that Uruguay have definitely been on a progression, a trend of positivity, and you cite the 2018, the last time they played, was a Uruguay win.
Yeah, so, indeed.
It was their first win ever against this side, but it was a win, and they went to the World Cup and they looked good.
I do think, though, to the credit of the Oaks, they have not. They were on a Canada like free fall trajectory in the build up to the last World Cup, and even though they technically would have qualified because of that bizarre Belgium-Spain game.
Yes.
They
fielded
in
like everyone else.
Yeah, exactly, and they technically got kicked out by a technicality, but in reality they were kind of usurped by Spain noticeably that year, and didn't deserve to go to the World Cup, and that was their first time not going. So it was very Canada-esque freefall. This year and this cycle,
credit to Andy Robinson, who has a good project for under him.
And Andy Robinson has come in. They've got their new stadium and they are playing better rugby. There's no doubt about it. They're physical. They're combative. They had a great performance against Argentina, which is that was their last game out. Was a 17-24. Just lost that game at the death
out in Bucharest as well, wasn't it?
Against the Pumas. That was very impressive. They beat Spain. They beat Portugal. They had a combative game against Georgia, which they lost, like they always do. But they put it up to the Pumas. Like, they're definitely playing some solid rugby. It's nothing special, but they have a decent forward pack. They defend gamely. They don't miss tackles very often.
And they kick threes. They kick for territory. They do diligent nuts and bolts man rugby. It is a contrast in styles in that way. They will try and turn the screw and squeeze Uruguay into submission. Is definitely the Romanian way. Their tempo is slightly slower, but their physicality is not in doubt. They can hang, and as they did with Argentina, who
and that was a full Pumas team, by the way, as well, with Materas and
that was our first little inkling as like, what are Argentina up to this year? Because they couldn't attack, because Romania kept kicking them the ball and defending. That was it. And like, Argentina kept kicking Romania the ball because they just wanted to defend. And then what ended up happening was that you end up in a bit of a scrap.
That's right. They do have some solid players, though. Obviously they've got Andre Goran, big number 8. He's a fine looking player.
Captain for them.
And they have a nice back three. They do have a back three that'll take tries, which you don't often say, but Melinta at fullback, Dumitru and Onutu all on the squad on the wings. We don't actually have the team sheets just yet because it's a Sunday game, but we do, I think they'll go with their usual boys, and those guys can finish tries. They definitely, they're not a blunt instrument. They do find tries when they're there, and they do go looking for them. They're a little more rounded than like a Russia, for example, who are all defense,
no speed at all.
Yeah, exactly. They're a better team than that, and they can hustle hard and win breakdowns. Their pathway for winning this game is to get on top of the Uruguayans physically and to kind of shock them with something like the US in the middle of that first game did shock Uruguay briefly with a bit of physicality, but the US kind of folded and went to sleep and slumped their shoulders in a way that this Romanian team doesn't necessarily.
No, it doesn't. It goes 80. Their recipe, their game against Portugal, who we were touting earlier in the podcast, Portugal had beaten them out the gate before they managed to wrestle control of the game back in the last quarter and nick it at their death, stifling a nice little dagger into another very optimistic, very momentum filled, very attacking based team. So that's a good little kind of thing to have in the memory bank going into a similar enough test in this Uruguayan side. They're going to try and bully them, try and be the bullying bigger side, bigger pack, try and make it about that, try and control the tempo, control the territory, and squeeze.
Work penalties, not give them anything. Obviously on the kicking game they'll have to be sharp, but they do have a back three that can counter pretty well. So if they force Uruguay with a bit of pressure and a bit of physicality to kick off the back foot, they can counter off that, set themselves up in good territory, go to work, win some contacts, win some penalties, kick some threes, get an edge on ahead of this Uruguayan team. I don't think the venue suits them particularly. I think they'd much rather be in Romania than Italy, which is kind of almost a Uruguayan vibe.
Could have been Montevideo.
Exactly right. But they will have a game forward pack, and they will be looking to take the game to them. I think.
I wonder. I'm curious who will kick their threes, because actually I was highlighting Florin Vlaicu, but this is the first Romania squad I can remember where he's not in it.
That's right.
He's their he's most cap player with 128 points and most points for Romania with 1,024, and he does normally kick their threes from 12.
It's a problem. He was a very, very good goal kicker, Vlaicu, and I think Melinte. I don't think Daniel Play, who starts at 10 for them, is a great goal kicker. I think Melinte was taking them the last time out.
A part of 10-man rugby that they're playing, a part of that is a very accomplished goal kicker, which they did have, which was yielding results. So that is a curiosity for them, is how clinical they can be with those threes.
Exactly right. If they miss too many of them, they could be made to pay. But I do back this team to find tries. I do back them to be physical. The question is, what are they up against? And in Uruguay, they're up against a very, very good side.
They really are. Uruguay, they will be slightly shorn. They're missing a few regulars, the likes of Arata at scrum half, Berchesi as well out half, Ormachea, very much a stalwart.
No Kessler either.
Lamana, no Kessler in the front row. So they are shorn of a few players, but we've seen with Uruguay they've been chopping and changing a bit over the summer because they don't always have all of their players available. They still play a pretty consistent brand. And they are still very competent and very disciplined and very organised. For a tier 2 side, they're very disciplined. That's one of my favourite things about them, is just how calm they are, and they don't tend to tilt even when they're losing, and they can lose pretty badly. They don't tend to throw in the tilted penalties, not like what we were accusing Spain of. They kind of do the opposite, which is a very good instinct, because sometimes you'll be blown away, and the risk here is that they get blown away. But they did have in that Rugby World Cup qualifier back-to-back tests against the US. They did better the second time. They were shocked the first time, but better the second time. They know what the recipe is. They need to make the game about attacking space at pace and not about kind of physicality on the game.
Controlling the tempo is so important.
Whoever is standing in for Arata at 9 has a big job to do.
That's right, no question.
Because they do set a lovely tempo, and when they click, they can be very, very good. They also all need to bring their kicking boots. I know Berchesi's not in there, but whoever's in at 9, 10, 15, and even some of the centres, they have decent kicking acumen themselves. They will have to expect that Romania will try and make the game about that. So both fielding and kicking will have to be on
countering
point
as well. They have in Freitas and Rodrigo Silva, they have some really lovely players.
They do.
Wise players, very good attacking instincts. They can move the ball extremely well and take tries when they're there. And that's what the difference has to be in this game. It has to be that when Romania, because they do defend, as you say, very patiently. They don't give up things easily. They'll get the jackal steal.
They'll miss a tackle before they give away a reckless penalty.
Exactly right. But they don't miss tackles too often either. Like they're pretty robust defenders of their line when they're at their best, and they need to be that again. And then it needs to be a tale of Uruguay's line breaks result in tries because they're clinical, they pick good tracking runs, they're quicker than the Romanians. So when they bust up the line, when they find an error in the defence, they turn it into 7 points, and Romania don't. Yeah. And that was the case actually against Fiji in the World Cup. They defended incredibly well in terms of their line, and Fiji had loads of chances but just couldn't get outside them. That's what they need to make Romania look like, and Romania will keep it tight, so it's important that they're packed front up physically and don't let them get on top of them in that area. But if they can hold it together, they could leave them a little blunt, give up the odd penalty here or there, but ultimately score more points.
And as you highlighted, for Romania, the track should suit them. The move to Italy with an extra day to prepare, it's probably a better field to play on than the Arc de Triomphe in Romania, which can sometimes be a little bit scruffy, that they should be trying to stay true to themselves and move the ball with pace and precision and purpose throughout. It definitely can't be wishy-washy, which it was at the beginning of that the first leg of that US thing. They were not particularly purposeful with their own ball, as well as being shocked by the US in contact. So it was just it amounted to them kind of being blown away for the first half at least, which they can't afford to have happen here. They need to be sharp, and they are gearing up for you were saying they have a game against Italy in the coming weeks, which is a big one for them.
They play Romania. They play Romania, then they play Italy and then they play Italy, which is an interesting little run for them. That's definitely and obviously they're into the World Cup as well, so that game against Italy is going to be a World Cup dry run, so they'll be focused on that.
As of this game being moved to Verona, that means they are camped in Italy, and they have a chance to kind of do a camp leading to that Italy game, which is a big kind of finals mode for them. So this will be a very informative one about where they're at since touching down. Obviously last time we saw them, they were in imperious fashion booking their ticket to France in 2 years' time. They need to carry that momentum on and try and just play their game, run the Romanians ragged, show them what Montevideo footy's all about, which these days is high tempo, high flash, very pretty scores.
Is that how you see it going? You see this being...
I kind of have faith in Uruguay. I do have some faith in Romania too. I think this could be a tight kind of jostling one that twos and fro's, but I'm going to give Uruguay the edge in Italy, which is a neutral ground now. Had it been in Bucharest, I probably would have said Romania, but no, I'm going to back the team that are exciting me more by attacking well and running in lovely tries, and I'm going to hope that they can get that stuff off against Romania and make it a pretty Uruguay win.
Yeah. Interestingly, Uruguay 16th in the world, Romania 18th.
There you go.
The US apparently sandwiched in between them, despite Uruguay's big win over them recently. I do think Romania are pretty good. I think Portugal behind them all in 19th. That's dubious. But then they've only just come to life this year.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a tight one in the world ranking context as well.
True.
I do probably agree with you. I think that ultimately I think that Uruguay are just a better team. I think a game between Uruguay and Portugal is interesting as well. Like it'll play out similarly, but I think that Romania were just about lucky to hold on against Portugal.
Oh yeah, Portugal, they should have lost that.
Yeah,
game. What was so impressive about it was that they didn't deserve to win, and they did anyway, which is a good sign of clutch in a team.
A good sign, no question. They do have a bullish pack when they're at their best, but in the main in that game they failed to control it. And Uruguay are a better side, and I would think they're a better side than Portugal, even though Portugal have impressed me. They do play a similar offensive style, but they're a little more polished and a little further
down the line. They had that big win against Fiji, which I can't imagine Romania would be able to replicate at all.
Yeah, so it might play out similarly, where they like Portugal, shock them with a bit of offense, grab a couple of tries. Romania will respond. It'll be tight, but I do think that Uruguay, too good, probably win it by about 7 or 8. But it'll be a good test because they don't have a good record in Europe, and it's time to right that wrong.
Yeah, no, this is it. So I'm excited to see how they get on over on European soils in Italy for the next few weeks. Yeah, very exciting game. Who do you got?
Yeah, let us know down below, but we're going to move on. Thank you very much for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to give it a like, share with your friends, and leave a comment down below as well. We really do want to hear your thoughts.